Hello and welcome to this Poetry Pit Stop. This is a chance to look over one of your own essays that you've been working on in a mock exam or class assessment and think about how you could improve it and its strengths and weaknesses. In short, how have you achieved the grade you got and how could you improve to get the next grade up, if not further? Now, as you can see from this example, I'm going to be looking at Dulce Decorum Est in this particular piece. You can see part of the poem, the start of the poem in the top left, and you can see an example answer just below that that's already been colour-coded. You can see there are lots of skills to use to pass the test. Now, you start off each paragraph by talking about that section of the poem. So in this case, it is the start of the poem that we're looking at. And we need to think what is being described in this whole section. Don't worry about individual quotes, don't worry about individual words being used, just what's happening in that whole section in one sentence. Once you've got that, you then have your opening sentence then. In this case, at the start of the poem, Wilfred Owen makes the soldier sound desperate and fighting just to stay alive. In the next sentence, in white, you can see I've looked at some individual words that are being used. In this case, old, coughing, knock-kneed. Now I've suggested these quotes because they all have something in common. They all suggest the soldiers are old, or ill, or near death. So what I've done is grouped those words together, all have something in common. Call it a lexical set, if you will. And these all suggest the soldiers are older than they look. The next one, which is the next skill, is in green. This is where I take one quote or one whole line of a poem and try to explain it in round about 2 sentences or so. And in a good answer, I'd want to link to Wilfred Owen himself. So I've chosen in this case the third sentence down, so the third line down of the poem. So I start by saying the line, "On haunted flares we turned our backs," implies to us, linking to our reader, us, the audience, that they are like a team as they work together to escape World War I, as Wilfred Owen saw how bad war could get. Full stop, end of sentence number 1. Sentence 2, the soldiers walk away from war as they were depressed at what real war was like. Now, there's nothing genius in that answer, it's simply taking a quote and thinking in 2 sentences, what does that tell us about war, and how can I link that to Wilfred Owen himself? The next skill, which is the one in pink, is where I zoom in or analyse one word from the quote I've already used. Now, my whole quote read, "On haunting flares we turned our backs." So I need to focus on one word from that quote. So I've got a choice between on, haunting, flares, we, turned, our, or backs. Now in this case, I thought the word haunting was probably the easiest to describe or to explain, so I've chosen haunting. I could have gone for flares, I could have gone for we, suggesting they're working as a team, but I went for haunting. I know what kind of word haunting is, so I said the adjective haunting suggests to us that the soldiers are already dead and links to Wilfred Owen as he died in war. The word implies the men are ghosts. Yet again, I've explained the word in 2 sentences, and I've tried to link it to Wilfred Owen himself, my knowledge of Wilfred Owen, the guy who wrote the poem. Now again, there's nothing genius about that. I've just thought, what do I know about the word haunting? What do I associate or think of when I think about the word haunting? And putting that into words, once again using the us word, the word that links to the reader, suggests to us. Moving on, the next bit in blue is the bit that's most likely to be missing from most students' answers. This is where I look at structure or form, something about the way this stanza is written. So I could look at whether it rhymes or not. I could look at the language being used, the way the lines are cut up, why the writer stops where he does, after the word sax and after the word sludge. I could look at any repetition being used in this stanza. Stanza, by the way, is the word we use to describe a paragraph of the poem. And I might look at anything here that seems to connect the whole sort of section together, the whole stanza together. Well, the easy option there is to talk about the rhyming. Now, rhyming, if there is rhyming, normally makes something sound happier. And if there isn't rhyming, that normally means the poet wants it to feel sad or depressed in some way. Now in this case, the rhyming is slow and steady, like the soldiers strides through the mud, and gives us the idea the soldiers are all weird and tired. Okay, so in this case, a very basic answer. So I'm looking at that thinking, well, why is the rhyming quite slow? Why is it every other line? What might that create if I read it out loud? Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through the sludge, till on haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. You get that kind of sense of it being monotonous, quite slow, and then I link that to what I know about the poem, and there you can see the picture on the right-hand side there that kind of suggests these soldiers slowly shuffling through the dirt, shuffling through the war, and I think that's what the rhyming is meant to recreate. And lastly, the bit in grey, Wilfred Owen was disgusted at what he saw and wanted the world to know what real war was like. That's where I've linked to the poet himself and what I think he chose to write the stanza in this way. You can see here then about a grade 5 to grade 6 example with the key skills in different colours, and that's one you can use to base your own example on. You take this answer to pieces. You might create a series of instructions based on this response to guide you through sentence by sentence what you should write as your own answer to gain that pass grade. Let's take the next section then of the same poem, Gas, Gas, Quick Boys. Think about the questions on the right. What is happening in this section? What line really stands out to you as being the most important line of the 8 or so Wilfred Owen gives us? What individual words from that line stand out? If you read each individual word on its own, which one seems to be the most important? How can we link the quote to Owen? What do we know about Wilfred Owen that fits the line you've chosen? And can we say anything about how this section's written? Can we say anything about the punctuation? Can you say anything about where the lines have been split? Can you say something different about the rhyming? Can you say how this stanza ends and why that might be important? Any of those things could be things you could say that link to form and structure. If you think you've got answers to each one of those questions, you're ready then to write out your whole response. Here you can see the same middle section of Wilfred Owen's poem, and you can see some sentence starters there to guide you through your response. These are set up then to make sure that you do actually explain the parts that you need to for the exam board. Now some of these responses are longer than others, so for that opening sentence, by the middle of the poem Owen is describing, you'd want to end that sentence within 5 words or so. It should be quite a short opening topic sentence. Then we're looking for a line from the poem that you feel is important, what that suggests to us about war, and then why it suggests that. What would Wilfred Owen's thinking have been when he created that line? Then you've got, once again, the second sentence to describe a quote. The line suggests war is. You link it to something about World War I in this case. Then you zoom in on a word. The word something implies. And notice it says the word. Well, if you can say if it's a noun or adjective or adverb, please replace the word in that sentence with the technical language you know is accurate. If not, and you don't know the technical language, that's fine. The exam board at GCSE don't want you to feature spot. They don't want you to worry about exactly what kind of word it is. It just means if you happen to be sure it's an adjective, you just put that into that sentence. Next up, it says this stanza uses. That's where you talk about the way this stanza is created, whether it uses different kind of punctuation or rhyming, etc. And lastly, you link in your last sentence back to the poet, in this case, Wilfred Owen. Now, let's say I was using these sentences for a different poem in the anthology. Obviously, you wouldn't be talking about war there. You might be talking about love, or you might be talking about power, or you might be talking about time. So think about how that poem shows love, or how that line shows time, or how that particular word suggests something a bit different about what you thought about the theme being suggested. Now you've completed your recap, you've reflected on what you did in your own task, you've recreated a paragraph based on those sentence structures. Now think how the two answers are different. What's different between the two? If you need to flick back into this video and look at the example and my talk through my example, please do so. And then look at your own example. What are the similarities? What are the differences? In short, how have you improved? Can you label the skills? Have you used a higher level of skill in your new version? Have you used more skills in your new version? Either one of those would get you extra marks. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, how will you try to make sure you do these same skills in the actual GCSE test or exam? How will you go about remembering this? Will you practice writing paragraphs based on different poems? Will you check your work, checking the skills that you've just done are present in each paragraph you write? And can you do it in a certain time limit? Well, at first, probably not, but that takes practice and it takes dedication, and that's what the exam board are looking for. Thank you very much for listening to this poetry directed independent reflection task. Good luck in your GCSE poetry test. Thank you for watching.